Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Panic mode. Trump's emergency moves terrify woke legal scholars. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. I really appreciate you guys. Trump is not playing this time around. From the New York Times, Trump declares dubious emergencies to amass power according to scholars. The Black Caucus is ready to impeach Trump for trying to protect Los Angeles. From the Daily Wire, Black Caucus head wants to impeach Trump for sending troops to Los Angeles. And as of the recording of this video, Newsom is failing to stop Trump. From Deadline, Gavin Newsom seeks immediate order to block Donald Trump's federal troop patrols in Los Angeles, and he was denied that immediate order. They will have briefing later this week. Newsom is going to lose this one. What are you supposed to do at this point? You have people rioting throughout Los Angeles, and the federal government has a job to do with their deportations. ICE is out there doing their work. They need to be protected. They're not going to just stop doing their federal government work because of violent protests. The federal government this time is not going to submit to wild city-by-city riots, and there will be other unrest. It's not going to just be Los Angeles. But this time the Trump people are ready. They have all their people in place. They know exactly what they're going to do. And it looks like they're willing to stoke the fires to pick out blue cities, because the blue cities are sanctuary cities, not cooperating with the federal government, and they'll do ICE raids and then protect those ICE agents until the city submits. And this is only one of Trump's executive orders. In disputes over protests, deportations, and tariffs, the president has invoked statutes that may not provide him with the authority he claims. Well, they can take him to court, and whether or not he has the authority, they're going to take him to court anyway. But in many cases, the Supreme Court has sided with executive power. They understand that the executive branch is run by the president, and especially in the case of the LA riots, the federal government has the right to protect their own people while they're going and enforcing federal law. To hear the president tell it, the nation is facing a rebellion in Los Angeles, which it is, it's really an insurrection, an invasion by a Venezuelan gang, and extraordinary foreign threats to its economy. They do have a massive number of illegal aliens in Los Angeles and in California, which means they're going to get a lot of ICE raids because ICE is collecting people and sending them back to their countries. Riots, violence, threats, that's not going to stop ICE from doing their job. We're not going to submit the federal government. The federal government isn't going to say we're not going to enforce laws and do deportations, especially of violent criminals, which not all of them are, but plenty of them are. They got their work to do. Citing this series of crises, Trump has sought to draw on emergency powers that Congress has scattered throughout the United States Code over the centuries, summoning the National Guard to Los Angeles over the objections of California's governor, sending scores of illegal aliens to El Salvador without the barest hint of due process, and upending the global economy with steep tariffs. Legal scholars say the president's actions are not authorized by the statutes he has cited and are instead animated by a different goal. Quote, he is declaring utterly bogus emergencies for the sake of trying to expand his power, undermine the Constitution, and destroy civil liberties, according to Illa Soman, a libertarian professor at Antonin Scalia Law School who represents a wine importer and 9 other businesses challenging some of Mr. Trump's tariffs. Crisis is Mr. Trump's brand. When he took office the first time, he promised to end American carnage. When he announced his most recent re-election campaign, he said he would reverse staggering American decline. Ever since he ran for president in 2015, he's argued that only he can restore the country to greatness. Now in office again, he is converting that rhetoric into policy. Mr. Trump says that events and circumstances, largely considered routine, amount to emergencies that allow him to invoke powers rarely sought by his predecessors, but embedded in statutes by lawmakers who wanted to ensure presidents could act quickly and aggressively to confront authentic crises. One of these problems is getting rid of the massive number of people that Joe Biden brought into the country, well in excess of any kind of immigration laws. Another one, the tariffs, is trying to rectify an economic situation where our country is not going to do well. It's not going to do well enough if it just buys everything from overseas, and those countries don't buy anything from us. We wound up with a $1.2 trillion trade deficit, and a lot of people say trade deficits don't matter. And the reality is, in short, they actually matter a lot. If we send all of our money overseas and all we get back are products, we don't get the jobs that making those products create. We also don't get the additional effect of success in those local economies because people are bringing in money from a job and then spending that money locally. We've built up a lot of the rest of the world. It's time to start focusing on the United States, and that's the point of the tariffs. This has been going on for a long time, but like the national debt, it's getting so bad that if it's not aggressively turned around, we're going to wind up losing a lot of what we take for granted in terms of our freedoms and in terms of our ability to have like the world reserve currency. We kind of need that. Frank Bowman, a law professor at the University of Missouri, said the laws that Mr. Trump has invoked were premised on a presumption that the flexibility they granted would not be abused. Quote, genuine emergencies do occur, and Congress knows that it's slow. According to Professor Bowman, quote, it wants presidents acting in good faith to move with rapidity. But Professor Bowman said Mr. Trump's approach was different. Quote, declaring everything an emergency begins to move us in the direction of allowing the use of government force and violence against people you don't like, he said. What violence against people that I don't like? I haven't seen that just yet. Protecting ICE agents that are being attacked or protecting the buildings that ICE and federal buildings are operating out of? That's not violence. That's self-defense. There's only violence if there's going to be an interaction. And then even if there were violence, the National Guard, the ICE people, they're all trained to minimize the violence and try to protect civilians, even the civilians that are attacking them, and even when they're not citizens. In a statement, the White House spokesperson, Taylor Rogers, said that Democrats had failed to protect Americans from economic and national security threats in action that's resulted in some serious crises. Quote, President Trump is rightfully using his executive authority, as evidenced by many victories in court, to deliver resolve and relief for the American people, she said. In fact, lower courts, which were selected by the people that are opposing Trump through judge shopping, have for the most part rejected Mr. Trump's assertions of emergency powers. Those lower courts are meaningless because all that stuff winds up getting appealed, and when it goes in front of the Supreme Court very much wants to defer to, and does, the president, the head of the executive branch. In March, President Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which grants the president the power to deport citizens of nations engaged in war, invasion, or predatory incursion, arguing that Tren de Aragua, a violent Venezuelan gang, which we have found was cooperating with members of the Venezuelan government. The FBI found that. There were other people who were anti-Trump, never-Trumper type of people that were working in intelligence that did put out a report that said, oh no, there's no connection there. Those people putting out politicized intelligence have since been fired by Tulsi Gabbard for putting out phony intelligence. The Alien Enemies Act had been used just 3 times before, in the War of 1812, in World War I, and in World War II. Several judges have now rejected the idea that the gang's activities justify the use of the law. Of course, these judges don't have the information that our national security has, so they should not be touching anything like this. They have to defer to the executive branch on intelligence issues. And sometimes they don't. They just do whatever they want to do, which is why there's judge shopping, which is ridiculous. Here's one. Quote, there's nothing in the 1798 law, Judge Alvin Hellerstein of the Federal District Court in Manhattan ruled last month, that justifies a finding that refugees migrating from Venezuela or TDA gangsters who infiltrate the migrants are engaged in an invasion or predatory incursion. Quote, they do not seek to occupy territory, to oust American jurisdiction from any territory, or to ravage territory where they have been ravaging territory and innocent civilians. That's kind of part of the problem. But that's what Judge Hellerstein said. He was appointed by Bill Clinton. Quote, TDA may well be engaged in narcotics trafficking, but that's a criminal matter, not an invasion or predatory incursion. When they cooperate with Venezuelan government officials, which they did, to come into this country, to do mayhem in this country, and to destabilize this country, and to make money and then send part of it back to Venezuela, which they've done. Yeah, they're cooperating with them, and they are a force that was sent by a foreign government. One judge, Stephanie Haynes, of the Federal District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania, a Trump appointee, ruled the other way, saying that the gang had engaged in a predatory incursion. Even apart from the 1798 law, President Trump has embraced the rhetoric of a nation under siege, promising amid stepped-up ICE raids and violent protests in California to, quote, take all such action necessary to liberate Los Angeles from the migrant invasion. President Trump used a similar justification for imposing tariffs in April, saying that, quote, foreign trade and economic practices have created a national emergency. 2 courts have ruled against him, though an appeals court has temporarily paused the broader of the 2 rulings. They can't stop the tariffs either, and there are multiple authorities the president can use to impose these tariffs. They're not going anywhere. California officials on Monday disputed President Trump's assertion that there was a crisis in the state that required an extraordinary federal response when they announced a lawsuit over his takeover of a unit of the state's militia, the state's National Guard. Quote, the situation in Los Angeles didn't meet the criteria for federalization, which includes invasion by a foreign country, rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, and being unable to execute federal laws. Well, executing federal laws are the ICE raids. And yeah, you do need to protect the ICE agents. And they had conversations back and forth with California about being able to protect the ICE agents. And the federal government was not satisfied with what they said they could and would do. Alternatively, California government told the federal government, just don't do the ICE raids and there won't be any problems. That doesn't work. They have work they need to do. That's why the National Guard was federalized, because they can't execute federal laws if California is telling them, listen, we're not going to help you by protecting you, not going in and doing the raids along with ICE. They don't need to do that. They just need to make sure they can keep law and order so that ICE can do its federal job by executing federal laws. The Supreme Court has yet to weigh in on Mr. Trump's recent assertions of emergency powers. In the past, the justices have at times been skeptical of such claims. They did not hesitate, for instance, to reject President Joe Biden's invocations of the COVID pandemic to take emergency actions. That was completely over the line, completely ridiculous behavior. In 2023, the court ruled that President Biden had overstepped his authority in canceling some $400 billion in student debt based on a 2003 law that gave the executive branch the power to protect borrowers affected by a war or other military operation or national emergency. That's just like spending $400 billion of the taxpayers' money and making all the taxpayers pay for it instead of the people that actually took out the loans. It's Congress that gets to decide how much of the people's money they will take to spend on our behalf. And I say take because they're taking it in taxes. In 2018, on the other hand, the Supreme Court upheld President Trump's travel ban from several predominantly Muslim countries, discounting his history of incendiary statements about the emergency the nation faced, one of those statements being that the situation in the country warranted a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. In his majority opinion, Justice Roberts cited an immigration law that gives presidents the power to suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as they see necessary. As they see necessary means at their discretion. And that's not for just you and me. That's for literally the President of the United States. It's one individual that has that power because they're the head of the executive branch. And that person is elected by all the people. Not that all the people vote for him, but all the people have a say in that person having that power on behalf of the people. The provision, meaning the law, exudes deference to the president in every clause, according to the Chief Justice. The court will soon rule on a case arising from an executive order issued by President Trump seeking to do away with birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants or illegal aliens and foreign residents. Though the court's decision is not likely to reach the constitutionality of the order and will focus instead on the scope of lower court rulings blocking it, such as the national injunctions, the order's proponents have also invoked the idea that the president's action was justified by an invasion. Judge James Ho, who was appointed by Mr. Trump to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit and has been mentioned as a candidate for the Supreme Court, wrote in 2006 that birthright citizenship, quote, is protected no less for children of undocumented persons than for descendants of Mayflower passengers. Well, that's not accurate because, of course, the 14th Amendment came after the Mayflower made it to the United States. But in addition to that, people that are born in this country who are not born from citizens are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Jurisdiction meaning loyalty to country. Their parents are not loyal to this country, so the children have loyalty and citizenship through their parents' country of origin. It gets a little complicated, but I'm not so sure Trump's going to lose this one. It sounds like Judge Ho has reconsidered his position. In an interview in November, he seemed to recede from that view. Quote, birthright citizenship obviously doesn't apply in case of war or invasion, he said. Quote, no one to my knowledge has ever argued that the children of invading aliens are entitled to birthright citizenship, and I can't imagine what the legal argument for that would be. Two notable provisions of the Constitution discuss invasions. One prohibits states from engaging in war, quote, unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. The other says that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff and Mr. Trump's top immigration advisor, said last month that the administration was considering suspending habeas corpus, the fundamental right to challenge government detentions. Quote, "That's an option we're actively looking at," he said, adding, "A lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not." The court's most significant ruling on a president's emergency powers came in its 1952 decision in Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company versus Sawyer, which rejected President Harry Truman's claim that a national emergency, there the Korean War, allowed him to nationalize steel mills in the face of labor strikes. The decision included a canonical reference from Justice Robert Jackson, a touchstone that Supreme Court nominees routinely praise at their confirmation hearings. Justice Jackson wrote that the framers of the Constitution were wary of granting the president emergency powers. Quote, "They knew what emergencies were, knew the pressures they engender for authoritative action, knew too how they afford a ready pretext for usurpation," he wrote. "We may also suspect that they suspected that emergency powers would tend to kindle emergencies. The more power that presidents get from emergencies, the more emergencies you're going to see. Yeah, that could very well be. But you can't have masses of millions of people in the country illegally creating violent protests and resistance when the federal government has a job to do. The federal government is doing the work of the citizens of the United States, the people of the United States. We're not going to just not have law enforcement because people are getting violent in California. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.